Sharon Van Sickle Robbins, City Club President, and I would like to welcome you all, those of you here at the Governor Hotel, and those of you listening on OPB or KBPS radio or watching on Portland Community Media's CityNet 30. Thank you for joining City Club today on Friday, September 24th for today's forum. In consideration of those sitting close to you and those in our radio and television audiences, please silence your cell phones at this time. Today we will hear a debate about Ballot Measure 75, which would authorize a single privately owned casino in Oregon and would designate that a specific portion of its profits go to the state. But first, some announcements. I'd like to start by recognizing any of our new City Club members who are here with us today, or those who are here at a Friday forum for the first time. If you'd stand and let us welcome you. As always, we offer our appreciation to our Friday Forum corporate sponsors, whose generous financial support makes these City Club luncheons possible. Please join me in offering our sincere appreciation to our three sponsors for the forum today: AARP Oregon, the law firm of Barron Liebman, and PGE. If your company or firm would like to be a City Club sponsor, please contact City Club staff at the back of the room or call the City Club office. And now to introduce our moderator. A partner at the law firm of Stoll Reeves, Jim Westwood concentrates his practice in state and federal appellate courts. Previously, Jim was a partner and associate at Miller Nash, and before that, he served as assistant to the president at Portland State University. A native Oregonian, Jim has worked as a television meteorologist and served as an officer in the U.S. Navy. He was City Club president between 91 and 92. Jim?
Thanks very much, Sharon. Good afternoon, and I want to thank City Club for the opportunity for me to be here today, but really for the opportunity to hear, I think, what's going to be a wonderful debate. It is my privilege to moderate this debate today on Ballot Measure 75 between Roger Gray, representative of the Good for Oregon Committee, who supports the measure, and Justin Martin, a representative of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, in which he is in fact a member, and also from the Oregon Tribal Gaming Alliance, and he is in opposition to the measure. As you know, Ballot Measure 75 is a citizen initiative that aims to establish a single privately owned casino about 15 miles east of Portland at the old Fairview dog racing track in Wood Village, and to designate a portion of the proceeds from that casino to the state for education and other public services. This debate's going to have several sections. It's going to be a little bit intricate, but bear with us, it should be fun. First, each debater will give a 3-minute opening statement. And then following the opening statements, the debaters will be asked questions. These questions have been written in advance of this meeting by the City Club Friday Forum Committee and City Club staff. I had nothing to do with the preparation of the questions. They are wonderful, I'll tell you, but I will be the person who asks the questions from my seat on the floor. Those are the only questions that will be asked today by me or by anyone in the audience. There won't be any questions today from the floor. We will also rely on the judgment of a distinguished panel of City Club members seated at the table in front of me to decide whether or not the debaters have indeed answered the question. This is a wonderful thing that City Club does. Some say brutal thing that City Club does. If two or more of the members of this panel raise their cards like that, after one of the debaters has answered his question, that will mean they believe the moderator's question has not been answered. I will then restate the question or the substance of it and ask the debater to take another try. On our panel today, we have Joyce DeMonin, Elizabeth Friedenwald, and Ted Kay. In keeping time and counting for knockdowns at the bell is Tony Iaccarino at the table in front of me. I'll be sitting beside Tony. Following the City Club's questions, each debater then will have the opportunity to ask either 2 or 3, depending on time, questions of the other. And then after this rotation of questions, each debater will make a 3-minute closing statement. I ask you to be respectful of the debaters. I know that's City Club anyway. I ask one other thing, that when the debaters come up to the podium, you give them as hearty a round of applause as you wish, and at the close of their both closing statements, you do it again. But in between, I request respectfully that you, in keeping with the Oregon system of voting, mail in your applause rather than actually doing it. I'd like to introduce who our debaters are today, Roger Gray and Justin Martin. Mr. Gray founded Gray Strategies in 1998 to provide full-service political and communications consulting to campaigns and organizations nationwide. Prior to forming Gray Strategies, Mr. Gray served the Oregon Education Association for over 20 years as a manager for field operations. Besides being with Good for Oregon Committee, Mr. Gray's clients, and this is not for identification, not to identify their position on this measure, his clients include the Portland Development Commission, Portland Business Alliance, Clackamas County, and other labor and teacher organizations, both here in Oregon, but also across the country. Justin Martin, our second debater, is a representative of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, where he is a tribal member, and he also represents the Oregon Tribal Gaming Alliance, as I said. He is the founder of Perseverance Strategies. He's had over a decade of experience in government, working at the federal, state, local, and tribal levels. He spent 7 years as the Intergovernmental Affairs Director for the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, and he previously served as legislative assistant during the 1995 session to State Representative Terry Thompson. So, enough of me. As I step down from the moderator's table to the moderator's table, and we invite the debaters up, let's give them a round of applause. In keeping, I guess, with Oxford debate style, the proponent of the measure, Mr. Gray, you will have the first 3-minute opening statement.
Very good. Ballot Measure 75. It is to approve and create a taxable casino at the old Greyhound track in Wood Village. And when we do that, the site is also recognized as a 60-year history of gaming. It's going to create thousands of construction jobs and 2,500 permanent jobs, and will do so at no cost to Oregon taxpayers. The permanent jobs are going to average $35,000 and additionally come with health care benefits. And this may not sound like a lot to you, but we've already received over 100 calls looking for applications. Currently, the Spirit Mountain Casino has a monopoly on the Portland market. They operate tax-free. They generate no real income to the state for its schools or its counties, and they want to preserve that monopoly, and I understand that's why Justin is here today. Today's debate is going to cover a wide range of issues. We're going to go back and forth over studies and reports and legal challenges, but the real issues are these. First of all, should the Spirit Mountain Casino have competition from a taxable casino that actually creates jobs, or be allowed to maintain their tax-free monopoly with no job creation? The Wood Village Entertainment Center that's going to be developed is going to have 70% of its space to be used for non-gaming, entertainment, theaters, bowling alleys, water parks, and be built to green standards. A $250 million investment is written into the measure that you're going to vote on. It's going to be one of the largest private sector job creations in the history of Oregon. The second real question is, what type of casino does Oregon want in the Portland market? The Portland market will have an additional casino. It's going to be located right across the river on the Cowlitz Tribe tribal land, and it will be taking over $400 million worth of Oregonian revenue annually, according to their studies. So it's not a matter of when, or it's not a matter of whether, it's only a matter of when this particular casino will be built. We believe that it's imperative that Oregon protect itself from the Washington threat. We think that Ballot Measure 75 gives Oregon voters a choice. Vote yes on the proposed tax-paying casino and entertainment center, create thousands of jobs and millions of revenue for schools and counties, or vote no and allow the Cowlitz tribe to build a casino across the river to take those benefits and jobs to Washington State. A yes vote on Measure 75 breaks up the monopoly. It provides competition. It generates desperately needed jobs. It dedicates revenue, and it protects Oregon jobs and revenue from going to Washington. It's the right time to vote yes on Ballot Measure 75.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Mr. Martin, your opening statement?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Measure 75 is an important issue, and the stakes are high for all Oregonians for these key reasons. 1, it changes who profits from gaming in Oregon. 2, it breaks a promise to Oregon tribes, a promise that has served all Oregonians well over the past decade. And 3, it dramatically changes how we use gaming revenues in Oregon. We will have serious implications for small businesses while also putting people out of work in fragile rural economies. I'm here today to urge you and Oregonians to vote no on Measure 75. It's simply a bad idea. The proponents will try to tell you that a private casino is good for Oregon. It's not. They will try to convince you that a private casino is good for education. It's not. They will claim that a private casino in East Multnomah County is good for all counties throughout Oregon. It's not. They will attempt to persuade you that this is the answer for economic recovery in Oregon. It's not. What Measure 75 does, without question, is create a private gambling monopoly for 2 Lake Oswego executives and their foreign investors. This is simply not good for Oregon. Both the state lottery and tribal gaming take revenues and invest them solely in government programs. With tribal dollars, 94% of revenues go to those government programs, and 6%, equal to the corporate income tax, goes back to the state. Tribal programs have been the reasons for tribes becoming more and more self-sufficient, with investments in education, healthcare, housing, alcohol and drug abuse programs, elder care, and many, many others. Tribes have become more and more self-sufficient, able to make a difference in the lives of tribal citizens and non-tribal citizens alike, while also lessening the burden on the state. Gaming in Oregon should turn lives around, not make a few people or out-of-state investors rich. Tribal casinos have also become a large economic driver within rural Oregon. Tribal gaming directly supported 5,600 jobs and supports 15,500 jobs statewide with a payroll of nearly $554 million. Let's talk about taxes. The greatest fiscal impact of tribal gaming comes in the form of income taxes paid by casino employees, tribal members, and all workers and businesses associated in non-direct ways because of casinos. In total, $140 million a year in federal, state, and local governments was due to the economic effects of Oregon's 9 tribal casinos. If someone tells you we don't pay taxes, don't believe them. Oregon tribes also give back. Collectively, the tribes have reached the $100 million mark in grants to nonprofits and charitable organizations. 75% of our purchases are with Oregon vendors. Establishment of a private non-tribal casino would be breaking a promise to Oregon's tribes, who are a known commodity and a community partner.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. We'll now move to the portion of the program where I ask the debaters questions. These questions, again, were prepared by the Friday Forum Committee and City Club staff. I emphasize the debaters have not seen these questions in advance. There'll be 2 kinds of questions during the debate. The first kind is in which I direct some questions to one debater, and he will then have 60 seconds to respond. Following immediately, his opponent will have 45 seconds to rebut. Some of the questions will be directed to both debaters. I'll identify those in advance, and then each debater will have 60 seconds to respond to the joint questions. We encourage our debaters in their rebuttal time to use the time as much as they can actually to rebut their opponent's statements. So let's go to the questions, and the first question, Mr. Gray, will be for you. The Oregon Constitution prevents the legislature from authorizing non-tribal casinos. Measure 75 supporters claim that although the legislature cannot authorize a casino, the people can. But the Oregon Supreme Court explained in one case that in adopting previous constitutional bans on casinos through the initiative or referral process, and I quote, voters intended to prohibit the operation of gambling establishments. Given this apparently voter-sanctioned constitutional ban on non-tribal casinos, how do you argue then that a constitutional amendment is not necessary for building your proposed casino?
Well, the answer is simple. The measure that we have in front of you is something that the people are making a decision on. The determination that is in that's in the Constitution itself says that the Legislative Assembly itself cannot cannot authorize and shall prohibit. We believe that there is a very big distinction between what the people can do and what the legislature is barred from doing in this particular topic. We believe that this is a measure that is on the ballot. It's going to be voted upon in November. We have no choice in that. And the question then will be if the voters on the merits believe that this is a good program to go forward, what we'll find is it will end up in court. And we can tell you this, that if it's determined that we need a separate constitutional measure, it'll be brought forward in 2012.
Mr. Martin, 45 seconds to rebut.
Thank you. With all due respect, Roger, there's a real problem with that line of thinking, and I think that is evident by the proponents originally spending $1.5 million in attempting to get the signatures needed for a constitutional amendment. It's simply not true that this can go ahead without that.
The next question is for Mr. Martin. The Multnomah Kennel Club, the apparent site of this casino, is a prime piece of real estate located within the urban growth boundary at the crossroads of Fairview, Wood Village, and Gresham, just off I-84. And the number of full-time jobs, including union construction, hospitality jobs with training and healthcare benefits, would evidently be a boon to those communities. So, with Oregon struggling to create jobs, why wouldn't this casino be good for the local economy?
Thank you. Quick and easy answer to that would be we're looking at relocating jobs. And I talked a little bit earlier about the fragile rural economies. Tribes throughout Oregon, there are 9, have been very successful in rural economic areas. The closest tribal reservation to this Portland market is Ronde. We are an hour and a half by car. So what we've been able to do, working with county, working with our local city folks, has really been able to create relationships, to create jobs, to put people to work, and really allow those communities to thrive. Those are communities that have been hit hard. Repressed timber areas like Ronde, repressed timber areas like Cow Creek down around the Roseburg area, and Coquel down around Coquille, et cetera, et cetera. So tribes have really been working hard, not only to rebound for themselves, but to also help the communities in which they live and work and operate.
Mr. Gray?
Justin, here's the difference. The economic development program that is available in East County is jobs, and there are jobs here and there are jobs now. And what Justin's attempting to tell you is that somehow, because those jobs are actually put into play here in Oregon, right in here in East County, that it's going to somehow affect a tribal member in Klamath County. We don't accept that. We respect everything that the tribes have done along the way to make sure that their folks have been taken care of. We think that there is no connection between the siting of this particular activity and the jobs that are created by it and any effect on any outlying tribal casino, except Spirit Mountain.
I ask this next question to both of you, and each of you will have 60 seconds to respond. Mr. Gray, you may go first in responding to this question. A tribe-funded study by Econ Northwest estimates that a casino would bring in about $120 million of annual revenue for the state. But this would not be enough, they say, to fully offset revenue lost by gamblers who might choose to play at the new casino instead of playing the Oregon lottery. By contrast, an analysis of this study, funded by the supporters of Measure 75, have claimed that any impact on the lottery will be short-term and that the study did not account for the money the casino will generate as a tourist attraction. So which study should Oregonians believe, and why?
Well, certainly, you should believe our study. The fact is that there really were 2 studies. We have an economic development study. It's called the Johnson-Reed study. It's on our website. But when the Wayland study showed up, we said, wait a minute, what we've got to do is we've got to have somebody take a look at this from the outside. And so we commissioned the Spectrum Group, a gold standard research company that told us from the very beginning that they would review it only if they would we accept the assignment to them without any obligations. And here's what they found. Methodology of the Wayland study, fundamentally and fatally flawed. by the way, due to a lack of understanding of the gaming industry, that it was misleading, that it wasn't candid or objective, that it gave them failing grades for accuracy, comprehensiveness, objectivity, candor, and also said it was neither transparent, conservative, or defensible. That's our answer.
Mr. Martin?
Thank you. Bob Whalen is one of Oregon's most experienced and trusted economists. Two quick numbers that I need to make sure get on the table here today. Because this casino would be the only one in that market, the Oregon Lottery will lose $92.6 million a year. Because lottery proceeds would decline, the state would run afoul of general covenants for lottery revenue bonds to the tune of $111.2 million a year, which go to fund park, transportation, school, and other projects. The Unbiased Financial Estimates Committee, which is comprised of the Secretary of State, the State Treasurer, and the Director of the Department of Revenue, said a casino could be expected to compete with state lottery for business. The committee estimated state and local government payments from lottery revenues would decline between $72 and $79 million a year. The measure would result in a shift of funds from state to local governments, which would leave the state with a gain of no more than $1.8 million and a loss of $26.2 million.
Thank you. Our next question, we're back into the 45-second mode, is for Mr. Gray. What financial safeguards do the supporters of Measure 75 plan to have in place to protect the residents of Wood Village and nearby Gresham and Fairview from bearing the economic impacts for increased public safety costs that might result from a large-scale casino operation?
Very good question. First of all, it's all about preparation. It's all about conversation. Mayor Fuller is here with us today from Wood Village. These conversations have been going on for 5 years. The conversations with Sheriff Staten and the deputy sheriffs of Multnomah County have been built up over the last few months. What we know is that the security and the other kinds of issues that are necessary are going to be determined by a relationship between the operator for security within the system and the Multnomah County sheriffs and others without the system. We know that that cooperation is something that has been built over the last few months, and we anticipate, and I know that the mayor feels the same way, we anticipate no problems moving forward because we're going to do it together, and it's all about a sense of presence and also deterrence.
Mr. Martin? Oh, I'm sorry. Only one card went up? Nope, we have two. All right. Mr. Gray.
Financial safeguards.
Financial safeguards. I'm sorry, I buried that in my question. That's my fault.
That is in fact an easier decision. That's an easier answer. As a part of the distribution that's going out from the revenue that comes into the casino, a significant amount of money ends up going into Multnomah County and ends up going into Wood Village itself. A piece of that is actually dedicated to public safety. And in doing so, the financial resources will be available for whatever the needs are to be able to handle the security issues. That was a much simpler answer. The other one was a lot harder.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Mr. Martin, your rebuttal.
Thank you. Well, the proponents have done something in looking at regulation here. They have actually capped what they pay within the statute to $2 million. Let me put that in perspective. Oregon tribes pick up over 71% of the gaming regulation in the state currently. We spend approximately $14 million a year on regulation. We are talking about a facility that will be the largest casino in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, and bigger than the Bellagio in Las Vegas. There are serious regulatory implications here, and that $2 million cap is severely underfunded.
Thank you. The next question is for you, Mr. Martin. The historical use of the Wood Village site for the proposed casino, I'm sure people will not be shocked to hear, was for dog racing, that is gambling. Why are opponents raising such a fuss about the conversion of the site from one gaming function to the other?
Well, thank you. Again, we have gambling here in Oregon, but let's look at what that gambling does. It funds 100% government programs. We're talking now about shifting public good to private profit. That's where we see a difference. We also see what could be a precedent set. Once, if it's so easy just to do something statutorily without a constitutional amendment, once we are rooted with one facility, what's to keep the next one from being built? In Salem, or Eugene, or Medford, or Bend. That is how this will disrupt. That is how this is different than dog racing of decades ago or lottery versus tribal government. An absolute difference between public good and private profit.
Mr. Gray?
This is all about entertainment. And you know what? It's all about competition. And the fact is that the Spirit Mountain Casino is interested in holding its marketplace here. The fact that the Wood Village Casino is going to be an entertainment center, it's going to attract tourists, it's going to bring new dollars into the system, it's going to bring the opportunity for the jobs to be developed right here in this state and in this city, is the huge plus of putting an absolutely well-regulated and well-maintained casino operation in Wood Village.
This next question will be also for you, Mr. Gray. The Oregon Constitution affirms that no citizens shall have privileges that don't equally belong to all citizens of the state. Wouldn't the passage of Measure 75 grant the owners of the potential casino in Wood Village an unconstitutional privilege because the ballot measure allows for the creation of, and I'm quoting, a single privately owned casino, close quote, and doesn't allow other entrepreneurs to build in this sector?
I think the definition of a single operational casino is an important one. However, that's only part of the story. The rest of the story is that if anyone else, any one of us here in the room, decided that we wished to also engage in that same economic enterprise, that we have a roadmap that's been developed by the proponents here to move forward, and we know exactly what we're going to have to do, and the people are the ones that are in charge. They're in charge of expansion. You vote them one at a time. This doesn't open the floodgates. It does it one at a time. But it doesn't say that it can be the only one. It says it can be the first one.
Mr. Martin?
First, I would just quickly agree with the question. I think it's absolutely correct. Second, I guess I would thank Mr. Gray for absolutely validating our precedent argument.
The next question is for you, Mr. Martin. Opposition to the private casino proposal seems to come primarily from Native American tribes who may see it as competition to their monopoly on destination gambling. So how would you respond to the argument that your opposition to the measure undermines free enterprise by reinforcing monopolies?
Thank you for the question. First off, I'm not going to sit here and argue that we don't have an economic interest in this as tribes. We do. We've been down for a long time, and we're finally starting to make some strides. It's going to take some time. A short run of 8, 10, 12 years of economic success does not make up for the hardships that we have felt for the last 150 years. And for 6 of the 9 tribes in Oregon who were actually terminated for 29 of those 150 years. So I won't sit here and try to make the case that it isn't about competition like Mr. Gray pointed out. But again, tribes are in the gaming business for a specific reason, and that's to fund governmental programs and to turn lives around. And we've been able to do that through investments in health, education, housing, elder care, alcohol and drug abuse programs, and we're proud and we will continue to fight for that opportunity.
Mr. Gray.
Competition is a very good thing. Competition is what made this nation great. Now the question is, are we going to be allowed to have competition? Currently, the tribes pay no taxes. And this particular enterprise says what we're willing to do is we're willing to take 25% right off the top, not off the profit, right off the top, and dedicate it to schools and to county services. It's something that the citizens of Oregon will want to look at and want to look at very carefully. The issue is not the competition. The issue is, are we going to all be able to move together to do the right thing when it comes to dealing with entertainment dollars? Everybody makes decisions on their own about where they want to go with entertainment dollars. This is only one decision.
And Mr. Gray, this question is for you. According to the Oregon Department of Human Services, something like 74,000 Oregon adults meet the criteria for being either problem or pathological gamblers. Of people who sought publicly funded treatment recently, their average debt was $32,000. 38% reported committing illegal acts to obtain gambling money, and nearly 48% had suicidal thoughts. What efforts would the private casino owners make to address the social costs of gambling?
There's a fund that's available through the state. The state lottery operates it. This particular casino is going to pay into it, and the problem gambling fund is an important consideration. The amount of money being presented by this particular proposal is much greater than what the lottery's percentage is that they put in. I'm not sure if the tribes put anything in at all. But I think the key here is that the management of problem gambling is more of a problem with what we call convenience gamblers versus destination gamblers. It's easier to monitor destination gamblers. We know who they are. These are the folks that would show up at our entertainment center at casino. The ones that are harder to monitor, in fact, the ones that are probably the largest number within your statistics, are the ones that are going to the local restaurants and bars and dealing with the VLTs that are available to them there.
Mr. Martin.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I'm very proud to serve on the Oregon Council for Problem Gambling. I've done that for the past 8 years, and we've been able to monitor exactly what goes on in terms of the majority of problems that we have with problem gambling. One, as a responsible business owner, the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, as well as other tribes throughout the state, take that responsibility very seriously for problem gambling. We have funded continually through the Spirit Mountain Community Fund opportunities for gamblers to get treatment and help. And we've funded several studies over the past few years that actually show us patterns with problem gamblers. So the reality is, tribes have a proven track record when it comes to programs and supporting programs for problem gamblers throughout Oregon.
This is our final question in this series. Question is for Mr. Martin. The casino's developers have made commitments to building the casino and the other property venues using the latest green building technologies, including the reuse of existing structures. Given the region's commitment to green building and creative reuse, shouldn't Oregonians support this kind of development, especially when it's financed with private investment?
Thank you for the question. Absolutely, and I would commend the developers from Lake Oswego to looking at opportunities for green building. The reality is, it shouldn't matter whether this is a casino or whether this is a normal business. We should all be looking at those green opportunities. It's just another example, though, of two executives from Lake Oswego trying to sweeten the pot and get Oregonians behind what is simply a bad idea.
Mr. Gray.
What an answer. The key to making something work is to do something as it relates to the values that you have. The values that we've seen as we've been out there working with the designers and the other folks that have taken a look at this property, it was these folks that said, we need to build this green. It was these folks that said, we need to make sure that we keep that existing structure because it has architectural significance. That was the beginning of the process. There's wetlands remediation, there's a whole series of things that are inside the renderings, which you can find again on our website. This is a serious commitment to be able to build it green and can't just be laughed away as something that is political.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're now moving to the next portion of our debate in which the debaters question each other. We have plenty of time for 3 questions, and during this portion of the program, each debater, as I say, asks questions of the other. They must ask their questions in 30 seconds. Because we are running a bit ahead of time, I'll be lenient, but try to keep it to 30 seconds. The opposing debater will have 1 minute to respond to the question, and then the original questioner will have the option of a 30-second rebuttal to that response. So we have question, answer, and potential rebuttal. We'll alternate between the debaters, and we'll begin with Mr. Gray asking the first question. So Mr. Gray, your first 30-second question to Mr. Martin.
Justin, with the recognition that there is a need for job creation, revenue for schools and other services, and with a further understanding that your Spirit Mountain Casino will be impacted by greater competition, which do you believe will be best in the best of Oregon's interests? One, having an Oregon taxable casino in the Portland market, or having the Cowlitz Casino open a tribal casino across the river in Washington State? What's best for Oregon, Justin?
Well, thanks for the question, Roger. I guess this is where the meat of the debate happens. First of all, impacts. They will be severe upon not only the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde and Spirit Mountain Casino, but as I talked earlier about, as we move on and we continue down the road with these precedents, that will be a problem that doesn't lend itself to the notion of a taxable private casino with our executives and foreign investors. In terms of the Cowlitz, that's really a false reality and a false choice. There are several hurdles that the Cowlitz is facing. They passed their federal environmental impact statement over 2 years ago, have yet to move dirt. The Department of Interior has not taken any land into trust lately. They do not have an MOU with the current city council in that area, and they are trying to establish that facility 60 miles southwest of their homelands, where their governance center is and their tribal cemetery. There are a lot of problems and a lot of hurdles to that project, and that is really a false choice.
Mr. Gray, do you care to rebut?
The key here is that a taxable casino in Oregon solves the problem of the Cowlitz. It's easy for Justin to say it isn't going to happen, but it is going to happen. And when it does happen, we have to be prepared. One of the preparations is to be able to say, let's not have the jobs go across the river. Let's not have the revenue from Oregonians go across the river. It is time for Oregonians to protect themselves from the Cowlitz Casino.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, your first question of Mr. Gray.
Thank you. Once again, Robert Whalen, one of Oregon's most experienced and trusted economists, has said that Oregon stands to lose more than $93 million annually if Measure 75 passes. Currently, Oregonians get 76 cents of every lottery dollar returned to them in services and funding for schools. You're offering 25 cents. Either your overhead is crushingly high and your business model is doomed to failure, or the developers and foreign investors are making huge profits. Which is it?
An interesting question, but not on target. This is mixing apples and oranges. The real question is, who benefits? The answer is the state benefits. It's the only guaranteed benefactor. 25% off the top. 25% off the top, $250 million of investment money at complete risk from these folks. The fact is that one of the investors that we're working with had a project in New Brunswick. The project in New Brunswick opened, the revenue flow went, the jobs went, but the profits haven't showed up. The key here is to put together a project that will work, and in order to do so, the 25% rate is right within the standard of the other 19 states that have these same types of taxable casinos. So it's not a question of competing against the lottery for the percentages, because the state owns a big piece of that and regulates it as well.
Martin, you have a 30-second rebuttal if you like.
Again, public good versus private profit. Real quick, remember I mentioned $111 million in cuts because of going afoul of general covenants. The reality is, if this casino were in place in 2009, the remodel to Lincoln Hall at Portland State University would not have been completed. The Eastern Oregon Alcoholism Foundation would not have been able to complete their medical facility, and a renovation project in Heppner of a wastewater treatment plant would not have been done. These are the types of projects that will be cut if we run afoul of those general covenants.
Let me clarify, when I said that there would be 3 questions, I meant 3 questions from each debater to the other. So that was the end of our first round. We have 2 rounds of questions to go. Mr. Gray, your next question for Mr. Martin.
Justin, you know that the Measure 75 really doesn't change any of the tribal gaming compacts. And we know there's really no evidence that the tax-paying casino will have any negative effects on any tribal casino outside of Spirit Mountain. But we keep hearing from you that the opposition to this measure is because of potential impacts to tribal members across many tribes. So please explain how you can justify Spirit Mountain owners spending millions of dollars attempting to keep the warm springs out of Cascade Locks and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars attempting to delay the inevitable siting of the Cowlitz Casino in North Vancouver.
First of all, not true that compacts will not be affected. Every tribe has clauses in there. If there becomes another facility, either located off reservation or a private casino, that those compacts will automatically be opened up. And some of the agreements that tribes graciously made will be affected. Second of all, competition with Warm Springs, again, we're not going to deny that there isn't competition out there. There is. But the bigger argument with Warm Springs and a private casino is policy. What are we going to do as a state? In the case of Warm Springs, are we going to start allowing casinos to move off reservation? If that's the case, how do you allow Warm Springs to move and not Burns or not Klamath? How do you figure out which individual governments can move and when? If we allow a private casino, when does it end? How do you not allow one for the next developer that wants to come in and buy one and put one in Salem, Eugene, Medford, and Bend? These are severe problems that we have to look at in terms of policy.
Rebuttal, Mr. Gray?
It is all about competition. And the fact is that the competition that we're dealing with here is a competition of monopoly. Spirit Mountain currently has about 40% of the market base for them that's coming out of the city of Portland. And you know, that's what they're trying to protect. And the key here has nothing to do with policy. It has everything to do with market share. And so as we look forward to the rest of this debate, the competition and market share piece just can't go away for Spirit Mountain because it is their real reason for being here.
Mr. Martin, your question.
Thank you. Tribes have a proven track record. They provide jobs, pay taxes, buy Oregon, give back. Your record and your client's record is labor disputes, tax liens, lawsuits, investigations into ethics violations, and spending of $1.5 million for a constitutional amendment, failing to get it, and then telling Oregonians you don't need it anyway. How can Oregonians trust you?
There is absolutely no justification to the allegations. I know none of that. It's fine that Justin can make it, but in the interest of truth, I know nothing about that. What I can tell you is this. What we have is a project that has moved slowly and deliberately forward with lots of conversations with lots of individuals. This is not some rush to judgment. This is, in fact, a conversation that has been built over time and commitments have come together. We have MOUs in place with the building trades. We have significant progress ready to be made to build this project and to operate it effectively. The most important thing in these kinds of declarations is to not jump and make a quick decision. That's clearly not what this group has done. They have deliberately, over time, moved in a very, very deliberate fashion. So now the question is, will that result in what we want? The answer is yes, because we're going to do it with the community and with others in support.
Mr. Martin, you may rebut it.
Thank you. In no way am I trying to slight our Oregonians here, but their foreign investors do not have a proven track record, and we must ask ourselves as Oregonians, do we want to allow out-of-state or out-of-country investors to come in here with poor track records and all of a sudden open up a facility, again, larger than the Bellagio in Las Vegas? Do we want Las Vegas gaming here in Oregon, or do we want something that goes to governmental programs with a proven track record that we all know and trust?
Thank you. That concludes the second of 3 rounds of questioning. We'll have 1 question remaining from each debater to the other. And Mr. Gray, you're up.
Justin, let's go back to another issue. Let's look into the future. The Cowlitz tribe is built. The Cowlitz Casino is built in North Vancouver. Jobs are lost across the river. Annually, the $400 million worth of revenue to Oregonians is lost to another non-tax-paying tribal casino, this one in Washington. So you're hired as a consultant. What would you advise the leaders of Oregon, the leaders here in Portland, the leaders of the building trades, and Oregon's unemployed to do when that happens?
Well, first of all, the casino being built in Washington is pure speculation. So I don't want to stand up here and try to come up with future scenario that we don't know whether it's going to happen or not. But we also have to look as a community and as a state and decide if we want to gamble our way out of difficult times. And we can't do it based on speculation. We can't do it based on what somebody else is threatening. For the past 14 years, a majority of Oregonians, about 76%, have continually said we have just the right amount of gaming here in our state. It goes to government programs. People are comfortable with it. They don't want more. They are comfortable with what we have now. And again, to Mr. Gray's question, we have to look at the value of public good versus private profit. And we can't gamble our way out of our problems.
Mr. Gray?
It's not like you don't know that it's going to happen. Your consultant, Dan Levy, was quoted in the Oregonian as saying, Oregonians, and Portland in particular, would be negatively impacted by the massive casino just across the river. It will suck jobs and revenue north rather than keeping them here. We know that all the studies, the college study, your study, our study, all says that an Oregon casino, a taxable casino in the Portland area, is the only way to protect against job loss and revenue loss to Washington State. Protecting the status quo isn't going to work anymore. It's time that we do what we need to do as best for Oregon.
Mr. Martin, you have the final question.
Thank you very much. K through 12 school districts and the majority of Oregon counties will actually get less money under your plan, not more. Measure 75 redistributes gaming revenues from public programs to personal profits using special deals and exemptions. You've attempted to create a private constitutionally protected gaming monopoly in the Portland metro area. You've exempted yourself from excise tax on gaming machines at the facility. You've capped the amount that you will pay for regulation, and you've limited the amount that could be spent to make up the gap. Why should Oregonians go along with shifting from public good to private profit?
First of all, we believe no. There is no loss to the schools, and there is no loss to the county. The studies that Mr. Whalen did and actually the fiscal impact study are two completely different things. The fiscal impact study from the state admitted that their process wasn't developed for the purpose of looking at an economic development project. It was set up to deal with Mr. Sizemore's tax initiatives. They couldn't take into what the effect was for the counties and the schools. They could only talk about revenue to the state. And in addition to that, when you look at the $250 million being brought in, the key is they couldn't even deal with that or the jobs as part of the conversation that they were putting together in dealing with whether or not this was going to be a negative or a positive impact. So the fact is, it's just wrong. The money is going to go to the schools. It's dedicated. It says it's going to do that. The fact that Mr. Whalen's report says that has already been discounted. So the real issue here is, I'm sorry, I'll go.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, rebuttal?
Well, again, I think there's a huge unknown here. And we as Oregonians have to look at who has a proven track record and are we willing to risk what we don't know, all for profits in a privatized gambling system. That's just wrong. Again, Measure 75 is a bad idea. Please join me in voting no.
That concludes the questioning portion of our program today. And now we'll move to the final portion of the program, which is a 3-minute closing statement from each debater. And once again, Mr. Gray goes first, and Mr. Martin will have the final word.
Even though I went first?
Yes, that's what the script says anyway.
We understood that. I understood it was a flip. But
Am I mistaken on this?
We understood it was a flip, that
Well,
those that went first went last.
Let me clarify. Staff? Do we know? Well, did you both understand that to be the case? If that's the case, Mr. Martin, you may begin.
Great. Nice move, Roger. Well, thank you all very much for listening to us today. Monopolies are about individuals or corporations getting rich and making huge profits. State lottery and tribal gaming in Oregon are about taking revenues and investing them into government programs that benefit tribal and non-tribal citizens alike. They would like you to believe that this is all about competition, and to a certain extent they are right. The competition with the state lottery shows that impacts will be severe, $93 million annually. So, as the private casino and their foreign backers make huge profits, The state of Oregon will lose valuable dollars that fund vital programs. Surrounding communities will be impacted by traffic, congestion, and crime, which we didn't talk about much. Yet regulatory expenditures will be capped in this plan, even though that facility is larger than any casino in Nevada. Backers have written in exception after exception, as you've heard, to increase personal profits, and the facility has been zoned urban renewal, exempting itself from property tax that should go to local schools. Will this casino bring in a lot of money? You bet it will. And with opportunities this lucrative, it's almost guaranteed that the passage of this measure will create a dangerous precedent. While they say only one casino will be built, there's nothing to stop them or another big corporation from coming in and buying another one, as I mentioned before, in Salem, Eugene, Medford, Bend. The people bringing you Measure 75 want you to believe that a private casino is good for Oregon. That's just not true. What you've heard today is that Measure 75 will create clear winners and losers. The losers, programs and services that Oregon depends on. Neighboring communities. Look at Fairview, right next door. Nonprofits and charitable organizations throughout Oregon. Oregon's economy will suffer. And finally, Oregon tribes. And I talked about broken promises earlier. And the clear winners, 2 executives from Lake Oswego and their foreign investors who have written themselves a monopoly and stand to personally make hundreds of millions of dollars. To paraphrase songwriter Jerry Reed, they get the gold mine and we get the shaft. On behalf of Oregon's 9 tribes, I urge you to recognize that Measure 75 is a bad idea, and I ask you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin, and for ceding the last word to Mr. Gray, we'll let you make faces while he's talking. Mr. Gray, your closing statement.
As you can see from today's debate, there's not much to be decided by Oregonians when it comes to jobs and protecting revenue in Oregon. Spirit Mountain's lobbyist, Justin's doing his job, trying to protect his client, Spirit Mountain. But the arguments that he's presenting miss the mark when it comes to looking at what's best for all Oregonians. Measure 75 guarantees a minimum investment of $250 million. That's even in light of the passage of Ballot Measure 66 and 67, where folks said there wouldn't be any more investment in this state. The mayor tried to go find $30 million to keep a baseball team, and he couldn't do it. This is not an easy prospect, and it's one that's been deliberate in the way that it's been put together. Justin's job is to protect the monopoly by protecting the status quo. He's attempted to define our project as a monopoly, but let's go to the dictionary. A monopoly is a situation in which a company owns all or nearly all of the market and gives for a given type of product or service. This would happen in a case when there's a barrier to entry into the industry and allows the company to operate without competition. That's the current status with tribal casinos and Spirit Mountain in particular. Measure 75 manages the entry into the business by putting it in the hands of the people. Nobody can go out and just set up a casino. The people have to vote for it. In order to be able to do that, you have to find a location, like an old gaming facility. You have to get local support. You have to put a revenue package together that you can take to the public. And when you do all of that, it's still the public that have the final say. It's not a monopoly, and it doesn't open the door. It is, in fact, the reasonable, fair, and appropriate way for these decisions to be made. With the current status of job loss alone, we should be looking at these kinds of issues. And when it comes to protecting the status quo, it's just easier to say, no, let's just keep it the way it is. It's just fine. And the answer is things aren't fine. Look at the polling. You read the papers. You know exactly what the problems are. And the answer is it's time to take some moves to be able to move ourselves out of the economic doldrums that we're in. There's an old saying, well, we have old sayings, that you can really easily marshal an army to protect the status quo. So we know that the job that we're doing is a difficult job, and we've got to educate people, and we've got to work together, and we've got to be able to really go out and communicate with you all, and that's what we're planning on doing. The real threat does come from the Cowlitz tribe, and it's right now. Applications are being processed. Obama gave the word, let's go, and they're going right now. The Bob Whalen report of this time says, don't come to Portland. 4 years ago, he was quoted by saying, the Portland metropolitan area is nowhere near saturated when it comes to gaming. I guess you get what you pay for. So the real reason that we want you to support Ballot Measure 75 is, it's the right thing to do, and this is the right time to do it, and it truly is good for Oregon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This concludes our forum for today. Roger Gray, Justin Martin, as our president approaches the podium, let's give a City Club thanks to both of these speakers.
I'd also like to thank our Truth Squad members, Joyce DeMonin, Elizabeth Friedenwald, and Ted Kay. And thank you also to our timekeeper, Tony Icarino. And especially thank you to our moderator, Jim Westwood. And of course, our greatest appreciation again to our debaters, Roger Gray and Justin Martin. Please join us next week for a debate between Metro Council President candidates Tom Hughes and Bob Stacy. We are adjourned.